Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. The die, as they say, is cast. 5 states have voted. Tomorrow the fates of the various political players will be known. Apart from what they mean for the politics of the individual states, these polls come almost exactly at the halfway mark of the National Democratic Alliance's term at the center. Unlike the United States, India does not have official midterm elections where voters get to reiterate or negate the verdict they gave. In any case, it has been noted that people vote differently in Lok Sabha and Assembly polls in India. But these elections in 5 states spread across the country, including the massive groaning heartland of Uttar Pradesh, could be a telling comment on the center. Today, however, we will review how the media has covered the elections over the last 2 months. Joining me on the program on this edition of The Big Picture are Vipul Mudgal, Director, Common Cause, Shivam, Deputy Editor, Huffington Post, India, Rajesh Mahapatra, Executive Editor of the Hindustan Times, and Yatish Rajawat, Senior Journalist. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Vipul, I'd like to start with you. How do you think that the media has covered these ongoing elections? Do you believe that the media has been fair?
I think it's a matter for analysis, but I believe every time there are elections, interest in media really goes up. You know, in a way, Indian elections really spice up the media. You know, there's a lot of coverage, there are a lot of all different kind of stories being covered. But under the veneer of that, you know, interesting coverage, you see that business as usual is going on. You know, we have certain norms about how to cover, you know, how paid news is to be controlled, how to cover incidents about terrorism, how to cover, you know, how to be fair and impartial in elections. But all that, I think, is thrown to the winds. And I mean, media is back, particularly the television media. It's very difficult actually today to differentiate between one and another. I think all of them are competing with each other at being naughty boys. I think there is something seriously wrong here, or maybe I am seeing too much negative.
Shivam, is that what they are, naughty boys really at this point in time? Because let's not forget, many of these media houses are controlled either directly or indirectly by some of the political parties themselves. So it becomes really difficult to be fair during covering elections.
Well, I think you can argue either way. I choose to look at the positive side of it, which is that covering elections is very, very hard. I think of all the journalists who have had to sort of travel for days in states as huge as UP, states as complex. In small states like Punjab and Uttarakhand, it's been a very difficult election to tell. And even if journalists are not trying to say who's winning, you still have to, it's part of your job to reflect the mood on the ground. And gauging the mood on the ground for journalists, for the media, is often not very easy. So the best of us are accused of bias, because if you write X is winning, so supporters of Y say you're biased, you're paid media, you know, you are trying to campaign for somebody and not just cover it, and so on and so forth. So in UP, if you gave the sense that Jats in West UP are moving away from the BJP, so the BJP was unhappy with you and BJP supporters were calling you names. If you wrote in third phase in the central Awadh region and the Bundelkhand region that the Samajwadi Party is not doing well, their supporters would say you started campaigning for the BJP, now you switch sides. Then if you wrote the BSP is picking up in East UP, the supporters of other parties say, oh, now you're singing another tune. And not just partisan party supporters, even general readers have been telling me, oh, you're covering all bases, you're hedging all bets. But fact is, it's a Brazil-sized state, you know, and every phase, 7 phases of UP are like 7 states, right? So like Goa has a population less than Delhi.
Sure.
UP has a population as big as Brazil or Pakistan, and you're covering a state as big. I think while there's a lot to criticize in the media, I think there's a lot less paid news now than there used to be a couple of years ago, thanks to the election commission clamping down. I mean, that's the sense I get just by reading the papers. You know, I think
you made your point. Let him respond to what you're saying.
Yeah. Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
No, I think the paid news. I mean, I know that Shivam wouldn't say this for any other reason, but I think what has happened that this has become the new normal. and we have factored this in our daily life. The fact is that the rates have increased, and paid news is going on as usual. There was a Supreme Court order on some kind of a curb on self-congratulatory and laudatory advertisements given by politicians at the cost of the exchequer by public money, taxpayers' money. That has also increased. The selective advertising, given to certain papers and not given to certain other papers by all political parties is also going on. So I think the media being compromised is one thing, but media being under negative, positive pressure, of money is getting bigger.
Sure, indeed.
Yeah, well, it's not the same as paid news, I think.
Paid news is a different story.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Let me get in my other guests into the picture as well, Rajesh Mahapatra and Yatish Rajawat as well. Rajesh, do you believe that the whole picture has been brought out by the media really as far as these elections are concerned?
In terms of what's happening on the ground?
Indeed, in terms of what is happening on the ground, in terms of how the elections itself have been covered over the last 2 months, has the voter been, made aware of really what's happening on the ground?
Well, I think the media has done what it could do. I would say that the interest in state elections have spiked significantly in recent years. And also the technology that is at your disposal today, the multiple platforms that you have to cater to, that also has meant media covers elections in very different ways today. And the engagement of people in election news and political news therefore gets a lot deeper. And to that extent, I think the media could do what they had to do. Perhaps the way UP has been covered, the Punjab has been covered, and even for that matter Goa or Uttarakhand have been covered is a significant scale up in the way we would approach covering elections in the past. My submission would be the national media still ignores a state like Manipur. A lot could have been written about that state, a lot could have been watched about that state. But I think where I would say media could have probably done a little more is that we have been a lot more focused in reporting on who said what about whom, what machinations are going on, what alliances are working out, and how would they impact the outcome. I think the media could have done a little more in terms of highlighting issues and highlighting that how come there are so many issues that affect the day-to-day lives of people in a state like Uttar Pradesh, in a state like Punjab. Could the media have done a bit more to get political parties to talk more about it? It seems that the issues that should have actually featured in election campaign, they have been sort of pushed to the background in many cases. I think in the context of Punjab, we saw a lot more of that being talked about. However, in UP, more so in the later phases, talking about issues that affect the livelihood issues of people in Uttar Pradesh took a backseat.
Indeed.
That has been unfortunate. I believe, looking back, media could have done something to bring that back to center stage, if not fully, because media can only make limited intervention, but I think they could have done a little more.
Indeed. Yatish, I know you want to say something. I can see you raising your hand there. Go ahead.
So, Frank, this election is, one clear trend that has emerged in this election and in the media is that the 70 to 80% of the reportage which has happened around the leaders and their rallies, particularly in the national media in Delhi. It has not been around issues or concerns that affect these states, and that is disappointing, not only because of the fact that the readers or the viewers have only seen the big leaders but not seen the issues, but it is also a misstep for the media because they have not been able to set the agenda for in any of the states. You look at the regional media or the Indian language media in Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Goa, and I've been reading papers in Hindi, in both in Uttar Pradesh and in Punjab. They have actually done a better job in some sense, because they have done constituency-wide coverage and they have focused on constituency level issues. Now this has been completely missing from the English language media.
Sure.
If you look at the television, and again I'm disappointed by the approach that most studios have taken. They have all focused on speeches, on rallies. Their own reporters who've been covering the elections have traveled from one rally to another rally, and they would cover a city or a place based on the fact that a big leader has spoken there. Now this is very strange, because what you have done is that you've given up your responsibility of setting the agenda, of raising the issue, and kowtowing down to the leadership, which is sad.
Indeed, fair enough. Vipul, is that the case? A journalist at the end of the day has the responsibility to paint the right picture at the end of the day and not paint a rosy picture. Has that what has happened? Because really the issues have not come to the fore as far as some of these states are concerned, whereas the whirlwind tours by Prime Minister Modi, Rahul Gandhi's campaigns, Akhilesh Yadav's rallies were all covered and given front page headlines, or covered extensively on television media as well.
You see, we all know media has been writing about it. You see, I have no problems. I too read the national media, and I'm an avid reader of newspapers and websites also. The problem is that today's election is a form of art, a science, and a management. There are spin doctors, there are impression managers, there are people who turn day into night. There are war rooms where people do minute-to-minute strategies. They decide that today, if there is election going somewhere, what would make my leader appear on television screen more? So send him to a temple. Maybe the leader sits down in front of the deity. There is a continuous commentary on that. He stands up. He offers water. He offers ghee, and it's just going on and on and on. So there is some manager who has factored this, that maybe this bait will work. And then you have the terrorism coverage. Now I understand that it's a very sensitive thing to say, and one should not jump to any type of conclusions. But at the same time, look at the media. We know that certain norms were set during the 26/11 coverage, Bombay coverage, siege, etc. We know that if you don't have confirmation, don't say anything.
Sure.
They're saying ISIS is like, pictures are being relayed back, it's a low intensity kind of operation, and after that what you get is a country made pistol made apparently in Munger, and then you say that this is I think the media could have been slightly more cautious, just going on saturation coverage of that. I see the hand in this of the media managers and impression managers who get into the war room and decide what will work.
Sure.
It's very important to keep the recall value of the leader in at the back of the mind of the voters, and that you can do by saturation coverage.
Indeed. Can't the journalists and the media houses see through all of these gimmicks, Shivam? Because or is it something that that goes along with news coverage today?
Well, they can. I think there are two issues here. One is the need for visuals. TV needs visuals. And fortunately or unfortunately, what has happened since 2011-12 is the Election Commission's clampdown on spending by candidates and political parties means that there is a lot less color on the ground. Indian elections used to be called festivals, and they're no longer that festive, in visually speaking at least. Which means that TV cameras and print cameras have a lot less visuals, and therefore rallies become a lot more important. That's one reason, not just rallies, but also parties and candidates need to produce visuals and events for TV to cover. At the same time, I think there is a lot more coverage than there used to be of just voters and what voters are saying. Unfortunately, a lot of Hindi channels and Hindi papers have been very partisan and have been covering just one, not just covering, but virtually campaigning for one party. When Akhilesh Yadav made the Gadha remark, you can discuss it as much as you want. You can say it's in bad taste and so on. And the Prime Minister responded to it getting political capital out of it. But one or two channels went on for 3-4 days. Like Aaj Tak, I saw they were actually interviewing Gadhas. They had a Gadha Sammelan going on all day. So when one does watch Hindi channels, one gets a bit of a shock that this is this journalism. Similarly, Hindi papers, there was the case of the Dainik Jagran website, which put out a so-called exit poll against the law in the middle of the election, on which a case has been filed, and they put it out on their website. They withdrew it quickly, but in the meantime, the exit poll, the so-called exit poll put out by the website of the Dainik Jagran, was taken and circulated on WhatsApp across UP, and by word of mouth that, oh, Dainik Jagran is saying BJP is winning, kind of thing. So I think it's the role of some particular Hindi channels and newspapers is unfortunate and needs some introspection.
Indeed. Rajesh Mahapatra, some of the issues that really the people want to know about and the journalists also should have taken up are issues like during every election season we see political parties making promises and then coming to power. Now, shouldn't the journalists hold these political parties accountable to whether or not they've delivered on those promises and bring out those kind of issues to the fore every time there is an election?
Well, I just wanted to correct, I wanted to have a rejoinder to what Yatish said. Media actually doesn't, we should not have the misconception that media can actually set the agenda for an election, or it can set the agenda for how the nation's politics shapes up. It can only contribute to that. It can, it has an opportunity to contribute in a constructive way, or it also has the choice of looking the other way, or be a party to how things are sort of going from bad to worse. And Shivam highlighted some of those
Rajesh,
issues. It is definitely a matter of concern that it's a very important institution, and it can do a lot more to strengthen democracy. The challenges that media faces in India as a democracy is not unique. The same challenges, similar challenges are faced elsewhere also by media, and media learns and evolves. Now, are we happy with the pace at which we are evolving? Probably not. Do we do enough that we can still do with the resources that we have at our disposal? The maturity that we have achieved being a democracy for 70 years? Perhaps not. One of the things that I would say that media can do, and the Indian media can do and do much better, and which is very important, is fact-checking. Today that's something which has become a lot more needed because every leader goes and says things that they want to say. And when you talked about promises that parties make, that is also another area where fact-checking, the journalism of fact-checking can come into play. And these are things that can influence people's opinion, that can shape opinion. The other area, I think, when we talk about elections, this is, as they say, it's a celebration of the democracy, and television often dominates. But can the way television covers it, and television definitely does it in a very, very narrow, limited fashion, and often, as Vipul pointed out, a lot of that gets plays into the hands of the war room managers, the media managers that political parties have. So what can journalists do? I believe that the digital medium, which up until now offers a great opportunity as a more democratic medium than other medium, to journalists, that can perhaps be used. There is nothing that stops journalists from turning into a publisher and distributor of their own stories, and the great stories that they want to tell from the ground. And having said that, let me also say that the English, the national English media cannot actually get into very micro level reporters, because they cater to an audience that is in metropolitan cities mostly, or tier 1 cities, and they always would do stories that connect their readers, their audience to the stories that they are out, writing from the ground. And I think it would be unfair to say that newspapers haven't done enough about it. I think we have done at Hindustan Times have done quite a few things. You know, we have gone to Dhawas. You know, we have done a series on Dhawas. We have put our reporters on trucks in Punjab. We did something called a river sutra to go along the coastline of Ganga River. I have seen great reporters in other papers like you know, the Indian Express has done some fabulous coverage of certain aspects of these elections. Indeed. It would be unfair to say that they haven't done that. I mean, it's very easy to sit on the other side and say that people are not have not done anything. I think there are some good work that has been done, but a lot more definitely can be done.
Indeed, we'll get to what more can be done in just a bit. But before that, yes, Rajesh, respond. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, Frank, three things. You know, before the election started, we did a survey in UP to find out what are the top issues that matter to the UP electorate. And the issues that we identified was that the biggest issue we identified was that people are still scared, ladies, girls are still scared of venturing out of their house after 5 o'clock. Corruption is still endemic in the police system and in property registration across Uttar Pradesh. Now, I didn't see any media or any leader or any political leader take up this issue. To come back to the point which Rajesh was making, I do understand that, you know, ST actually did a remarkable job of the coverage, but my disappointment was not directed at ST. My disappointment was across the board. It was every other newspaper that you looked at, and you looked at this, when you looked at the pictures of the leaders, which seemed to have set the agenda from the television news. And I don't take this point also, which was made by Shivam earlier, that there was no color. I traveled through UP, you know, continuously through Purvanchal by road and, you know, by public transportation, and there was enough color. I mean, election funding has got nothing to do with color on the ground. I mean, if you need to find color, you will find color. If you go and report there, and I have done reporting in these states, I've worked in newspapers in Punjab. It's such a rich society to cover or, you know, write stories about. But unfortunately, you know, when it comes to election coverage, somehow there is a myopia that the only people who need to be covered is Captain Amrinder Singh, Akhilesh Yadav, Mayawati, fortunately or unfortunately, does not give any media interviews except the one that she addressed a press conference at the last day of the voting. So, you know, 3 or 4 leaders were constantly in the news, and I don't buy this argument that there are war rooms and there are media managers. You know, these war rooms are not a recent happening. These war rooms and these media managers has been there as long as election has been there, as long as politician has been there. And, you know, journalists have learned that, okay, fine, there is a spin.
Point taken, Yatish. Everybody wants to respond to what you're saying. Hold on.
That story need not be limited just by the.
I'm going to let you have the last say on the program.
The war room has become bigger, or there are more people in the war room. There are more people, more journalists also out there.
You can give your concluding remarks. Yeah, you can give your concluding remarks. You know, how do we improve the reportage, Vipul? I mean, that is always, you know, a scope for improvement. And when does it start?
Long-term improvement will come by knowing that there is a problem. If we don't recognize that there is a problem, there'll never be an improvement. I think the role of the universities, the role of think tanks, you know, research institutions, you do longitudinal, long-term research and find out what was going wrong. Talk about, you know, who has got preferential treatment, who's got continuously left out. You know, particularly there are certain things when you start doing textual analysis, you start seeing what has been covered and how. But what about news which has been omitted, which has not been considered newsworthy at all? Indeed. You know, for instance, while all this was going on, there was also acquittal of certain, you know, accused in a bomb blast, in an earlier bomb blast case. Was that also covered the way it should have been or not? You know, these are the things that only research institutions can find out. One last point I must make, just to correct my other co-panelist, that you see the science of elections for political parties has improved over time, and the impression management and the spin doctoring in India is a very recent phenomenon. I've done a lot of study of this, and we can discuss this at some point.
Shivam, quick,
Frank, I think because we are short of time, I want to make another point. We can keep discussing the mainstream media till kingdom come, but what I'm really disappointed by is alternative media is, with the power of social media, ordinary citizens of the voting states and across India could do a lot with the power of the internet in terms of data, in terms of fact checking that Rajesh was talking about, in terms of documenting the election around them. But I don't see that happening. People need to realize that they themselves are media today, and whatever shortcomings they see in mainstream media, they can make up themselves by using social media. I don't see enough of that happening in India.
Indeed, fair enough. Rajesh, your closing comment.
I would just reiterate what Vipul said. Journalists need to read more. If they are going to cover UP, they need to read up a lot more. They need to get into data. They need to look at much more sustainable explanations for what a leader said and why, rather than just reporting what a leader said. And I think they need to do a lot more homework as they go around covering elections.
Sure.
I see, and this happens right from the top, from senior journalists to junior reports. Paratroop for 2 days, come back and act as if you are an authority now on UP.
Fair enough. I think that's a very valid point that you're making.
That practice needs to stop.
Indeed, that practice needs to start, and journalists have to be better prepared as far as covering a story itself is concerned. Rajesh, Rajawat, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
3 points, Frank. Elections are going to get complicated in the coming times. I don't see journalists as prepared for these elections in the coming times. I hope what Rajesh is saying happens, and I'm optimistic that if it doesn't happen in traditional media, it will happen in digital media. I'm also very keen that use of data and use of versus use of anecdotal or leaders' quotes needs to be balanced, and journalists need to be better prepared with not only handling data inside the story but building stories based on data.
Indeed. All right. On that note, I'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Vipul, Mudgal, Shivam, Vij, Rajesh, Mahapatra and Yatish Rajawat, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much for watching. See you again next time.